Hopefully, like I have to get the video going. So. There you go.
Can you see me?
Yes, I do. So welcome to Tony on my CoCreativeSex Podcast series. Aha. So I just give a little bit of context. We're going to be talking today about what it's like to be 17-year-old boy and dealing with like anything that has to do with sex. Like, what does it look like in a 17-year-old guy's head right now in 2019? And to put this whole series of podcasts in context, this is the CoCreativeSex Podcast series, the CoCreativeSex Summit Podcast series, because we're in the process of building up all these conversations around sex and just getting all these conversations out in the open about what people are dealing with. And we're building a momentum because I'm about to launch my the Sex Up Your Life book and CoCreativeSex Summit at the same time is inviting all these amazing experts in the field of sexuality that are going to be giving workshops and really helping people get to the next level in terms of feeling empowered and free around sex, basically. So I'm really excited that Tony accepted to come on the podcast with me. Just to put in context, I really was excited to talk to Tony because he's a 17-year-old that's very open and really also like courageous. You know, he's willing to ask questions, to go out there and express himself in front of like loads of people about, you know, what he's dealing with. And when he found out that I was doing work around sexuality, he had a lot of questions for me, and it just made me realize like this is probably like many questions that 17-year-old guys have too. So he accepted to come on this podcast with me. So yeah, maybe to put you in context right now, like Tony, maybe you can just explain to us what do you feel guys your age are dealing with right now around sex?
What a question. Well, I'll tell you what I've seen and what my stance on it is and how I see it. So right off the bat, like kind of for the younger high schooler kids, such as grade 8s and grade 9s, really the whole deal as a boy is how much pussy can I get? When can I lose my virginity? When I want it now. And it's literally a competition. Who gets this first? Who gets that first? Who gets this first? Who has done this first? Who's been with her first? So it's a lot of competition, and it's really in those younger ages, like 13, 14, 15, it's really a race to who can get whatever they want the fastest.
So what do you think like gets guys like at that age, like why suddenly, like, you know, before that they weren't interested in girls? At what point does it become like, wow, like it's the pussy race? You know, when did that start happening?
Well, it's different, right? Using orientations and all that, like stuff. But I guess
Oh, you froze on me.
Yeah.
There you're back. There you're back. You missed some of that though. Go for it. So when does that start? Like that suddenly like shift, you know, where you're like, normally, you know, you're talking about just the football game or doing your homework or, you know, like, you know, having jokes with your friends. When does suddenly that shift happen? Like it becomes this race to get like, you know, it's not only like to kiss a girl, it's like to actually have pussy. So how does that shift happen?
Well, it's really like as a boy, you're really brought up competing with other boys because sports and just how boys work, you're always competing. And so on the playground, you'll see, oh, this guy's talking to that girl, this guy's surrounded by girls, or whatever it is, right? And so you say, well, I want that. And I wonder what that feels like. And I wonder what it would be like to be in that position. So you start like, it's, I swear to God, it's about competition. Like, there's this moment where you see another guy doing something with a girl and you're like, oh, I could do that. So when it's, for me, it was about 11, 12, but it's really like who you are, how you were brought up. It's whatever it is. But
Mm-hmm.
my experience is that that sort of transition into grade 8 is really where it happens.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, why is there suddenly this interest? Like, when does it get to become genitalia? Like, it's like, when does it start to like go from like, hey, I'm interested in her personality to like, hey, I want that?
Hmm. When or why?
Both, like, when and why?
Okay. Um, I would say why. Well, first of all, there's this weird thing down on your body. You don't know what it is. You don't know what it does, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once you explore that a little bit, you kind of, I mean, to be not to be crude, but you start playing with it, and then you're like, wait, aren't I meant to use this on a girl? And if it feels so good by myself, what would it feel like with a girl?
Right.
So as that connection happens, as you're like, wait, me, girl, oh, oh. And so it's like, once you connect those dots and once you understand what your body has, that I would say that's why, because you finally realized, oh, this is meant to connect with that.
Mm.
And when it's really a matter he's had if I'm gonna have sex, I'm gonna like me. I was a race to the pussy. I was just go get it, be done with it, and have your trophy. And with some other guys, it's more about the. I would say why
Hey, Tony, our connection is not really
because
great
the
right now.
dots are meant to be connected. No, I thought
No,
no. Can you hear me?
it's not super
Mm,
great. Maybe what I'll do is like, maybe I'll just take my image off right now and we'll just listen to you. And
okay,
then maybe that will help the connection go. Okay. Let's see if that makes any
sure.
difference. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah. So can you just repeat that for us? Like what
Mhm.
was it that like suddenly created that for you? You talked about that connection that happens, where you're like, hey, this feels good on my own. This will feel good with another girl. And you put the two together. And so you're kind of going a bit in that direction, like why that happens and when.
Mhm. Yeah, really, why? Well, because you're told sex is good, right? Like being brought up and you see your you see other people with girlfriends and you're like, "Oh, she's hot." And you think about it and you're kind of like, "Oh, there's other things and blah blah blah." But really, it's like I want to explore what is this new territory? Can I colonize it?
Okay.
You know?
So it's okay, it's like a colonization process.
I mean, I mean, for lack of a better word, well, it's more of like it's really just it's a race. Like
Yeah.
for me
So
and
when you
my
say like,
friends, it was a
yeah, go
race.
for it. It's a
Hmm.
race. So
Yeah.
you talked about some people see it as a trophy and some other people see it differently. So what was that distinction that you were going to share?
Mm. Well, for me, I as a young boy, like my mom, she told me, Tony, you're gonna get ladies. I said, okay, great. So there's a belief. Now I have the belief in myself. I just lost track of your question, please. What was, oh, the distinction
Between
between,
trophy, maybe other people have another way of approaching it. You
hmm
want to get the
hmm
trophy.
hmm like for me, I was brought up, okay, Tony, you're gonna get ladies. And just by the way you use that word, like get, that really objectifies it, right? Like it's an object now. You're gonna get it instead of you're gonna connect with it. So it's really like how you've been brought up. I was brought up, pussy's a trophy because you're gonna get ladies. Other guys, they've been brought up in a different way for love and connection and whatever, but that's the distinction.
Have you actually seen that? Like, did you see that some guys around you, they really want to just have connection with the girls and it's not about the trophy side of it?
Yeah, I have. Like, I've had one friend who, like I said, he said, I don't want to lose my V card until I know the girl is special. So,
and like, so you were talking about the connecting of the dots, right? Like, hey, this feels good on my own. That goes with that. If I bring the two together, that's going to be great. But where was your first, like, what helped you connect the dots? Was like, what were you watching or what were you seeing or what were you hearing? Like, I'm just curious, like, is it something that you saw on porn or TV, or is it like, you know, coming from conversations from other guys? Like, where do you create the imagination of what sex is for you at 17?
Well, I'll tell you where it started. That's a question. Sorry, can you repeat the question? My mind just blanked because that is one question. Yeah.
So, like, you know, like, where do you, we talked about connecting the dots between, like, hey, this feels good on my own. I just discovered my penis, and this, if I rub it this way, it feels good. And then, hey, like, if it feels good on my own and I'm with a woman, like, hey, that goes with that. And hey, I want that now. But what helped you connect the dots? Is it like, what created the imagination around sex for you? Was it like porn? Was it conversations, family? Like, where did you create your imagination around sex, what, 17, that this will be something that you want?
I would say it was created out of pornography, yeah. And yeah, like, really, my experience has been that I grew up kind of seeing that kind of thing. Like, I had easy access to porn as a child. Not that my parents allowed it, but like as a 10, 12-year-old boy with the internet, you go crazy and you're like, what is a boobie? What is a vagina? And so you look into it and you're like, wait, if I put this in there, apparently that feels good. Okay, I want to try it.
Right.
So.
And so, like, what was the imagination before you had sex for the first time? Like, what was the imagination that you had around sex? And I'm actually never asked you if you actually had sex yet. I don't know if you want to answer this on Facebook Live, but what was the first like, I think you mentioned that you had, but what was your imagination before and like after, like in terms of like, now you saw in porn, you see these things happening, you know that on your own it feels good in this certain way, and then when you bring in the other person, what happens?
Well, my experience was when I was getting in, it was a trophy for me. So I didn't have any kind of connection with that female. So really it was like, is this really happening? Can I can I hold my load? And then more so of, okay, how do I do this? So like, you're like, I guess my experience was we're in the bed and stuff's happening and I'm just like, wait, like, am I doing this right? Does this feel good for her? Yeah, it was a lot of am I doing this right? Because the way porn brings you up is like you have to have a certain way of having sex, and that's just like bang 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 bang, and it's It's not like that. So a lot of my expectations weren't met because they were unrealistic expectations.
Mm-hmm. And so how did you have to deal with, like, because you were in the bed with this real human being, so how did you deal with her after? Because like if this was like you were in your mind that she's a trophy, but she's actually a
Mhm.
human being with feelings and emotions and all kinds of things, so how do you deal with her after you're like, and you're like in that mindset, like, did I do this right? This doesn't look like porn right now, and like, ooh, like, and just there's so many dynamics happening at the same time. But how do you deal with her after all those
Mhm.
those things going through your mind?
Um, I'm not gonna lie, my former self was an asshole
Mm-hmm.
and had very little empathy for women because the way I saw them was as a trophy. So why would I use empathy? But um, my way of dealing with them back then has changed from what it is today. So like there's two different ways I deal with it. So the old me would deal with it as like, oh, you gotta leave. Like, I'm sorry, my parents are coming home. Like, you just gotta go. Like, have a good one. I'll give you a granola bar if you want, like, for the road. But now it's more so, okay, well, first of all, the only reason I'm in the bed with this chick is because she's worth it and like she's met a certain level of connection with me. Um, so like for me, if she gets in my bed, like she can stay in my house all day long now because I'm not letting you into my bedroom if you're not somebody I connect with on a personal level.
Mm-hmm.
So in the past, I would say you got to go. Today, I would say stick around, whatever, have fun.
Mm-hmm. Cool. But I'm just curious in terms of like at the heart level, like, okay, so the past you didn't have, you were kind of shut down in terms of like the impact on her. You're just like, okay, just get
Hmm.
out of here kind of thing.
Yeah,
Now you've kind of realized that connection's
yeah.
important and you're not letting someone in if there's no connection. So like how, like, so that means like you kind of have a different like connection with that person when you're having it. So what's the experience now when you're bringing that connection in?
Oh, what is the experience after the deed?
No, it could be like during and after, like it just the whole connection piece. How does that play out now?
Hmm.
Like, are you concerned about
Hmm.
her? How do you interact with her after? How do you make sure that she's
Hmm.
enjoying herself? Or like, what's that whole piece about like seeing things from her perspective, let's say?
Yeah. Well, now when I let's well, when we're in the act, I will like me, like I'm really in here, like a
Mm-hmm,
lot, just
mm-hmm,
because the way my brain works. So like even before the process, I'll be looking into like, okay, how do I do this? How do I do that? But then once I get in it, I just really, because we already have that connection, right? So we're already there to a level where we can communicate. So I'm comfortable asking her, hey, does this feel good? High, low, harder, softer, faster, slower, right? So when the way I see it, when you're in the act, really it's about asking good quality questions because God knows women don't get orgasms very often. So like yeah, I apply a lot of empathy in the act.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and like, there's so many things to discover about female pleasure that I'm sure you'll get a chance to discover throughout your life. Being your own 17 years old,
Yeah.
right? So there's like tons of things to still learn about female anatomy and pleasure points. Just did you know that women can actually get orgasms from 10, 12 different ways?
Really?
Yeah. And you know that
Well,
like,
wow.
women can be multi-orgasmic, meaning they once they actually have a peak of pleasure, they can actually have more after that.
Hmm.
So it's very easy for them. Like, I mean, they have to get to a place of pleasure, of course, but it's easy once you have pleasure, like women can ride that for a very long time. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like you blew my fucking mind. You know what, we were talking and I was asking you about like orgasms for women, and then you were like, oh, well, you can just move your hand along her body and use her energy systems to make her come. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what? Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, actually that's a
that
good
blew my
point.
mind.
There's this technique called the energy ecstatic experience that actually one of the guys is coming to our conference on this 15th and 16th of February, and he'll be teaching that. Like, how do you actually move the energy, kind of like a puppet master? How do you move the energy over someone's body so that they can have an experience of like that heightened energy going through your body? But we won't get into that too many details, because I'm still really curious about your experience and what's going on for 17-year-old boys.
Okay.
But like, yeah, so what, like, because there's a lot of talk about, what the boys' locker rooms like in terms of conversations about sex or whatever. So what does that look like, in 2019? Post Me Too era, like what does that look like when you're 17? You've seen all these people like, Harvey Weinstein get like kicked out of like their positions. And like, what does the locker room look like now?
That's a good question, actually. My experience and the locker room experience when we talk about women, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the locker room experience is really, when we do start talking about women, it's very brief, but it's very to the point. Yo, did you see that chick? Holy fuck, dude. Oh my god. I could not focus on the game. Oh my god. Holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a kid on our hockey team. He saw this like beautiful woman, right? She's in her 40s because I know her. And she's beautiful. So he sees her and he would not shut up. He was just like, I gotta go outside. I gotta see her. He left the locker room to go and watch this lady from the arena because I play hockey, right? So he would be by the glass pretending to watch the game. Instead, he's checking out this older lady. So it's I'm not gonna lie, it's perverted, but we don't talk about women that much, actually,
Mm-hmm.
to surprise you.
Mm-hmm. No, that's awesome. I just wanted to. I was curious what the reality of your experiences. So whatever is there, I'm happy to hear.
Hmm.
There was also like, like let's say in the 80s and 90s, a lot of like things around slut shaming, and I'm just curious, like, let's say a woman decides to have sex with you, like what does that mean for the other guys of your age, and does she lose status or gets like suddenly interested in more guys wanting to have sex with her, but she's not like relationship material? Like what's the status on that?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, because I can give you examples, actually. There are women who they're they're all right, they're decent, and you'll hear that somebody did it with them, and depending on who the girl is, the guy might even lose status. Like I had a friend in grade 8, he hooked up with this just chick, right? Like she didn't make the cut for the boys. She didn't make the cut, but he still went with it. He hasn't, like, we didn't let him go off of that just because of the quality of that. As for women, it really depends. Like there's this one girl, she's been around the town, like she's hit up like 20 men. I shit you not. But her social behavior and her personality and her body and her face, it's like it really depends on the woman. If the woman is just a really easy fuck, but she has no personality, if you fuck her, she's gonna still be seen as that hoe because that's what you call her. Well, that's very derogatory. Let's put it this way. If the girl is known as an easy catch, then the guy loses status unless they start to date. If the girl is an easy catch, to like this girl, for example, like I've hooked up with her, I kissed her a few times, right? She's been through the entire team, like she's been through a lot of men, but still she has that status just because of who she is. So it's really depending on who the female is and how easy she is to get.
So, in this context, like, okay, there's like pressure on the women of like, meeting the status of whatever the different hierarchy that was set up. But for you guys, as guys, like you said, there's a status happening too, where you can get promoted to a higher status or lose status depending on who you go with and which trophy you get, right? So
Okay.
what kind of pressures does that put on you in terms of like, relating to someone sexually, and even in terms of just friendship or relationship or...
Sorry, the question is, what pressures does that put on us?
Yeah, for like as like a guy, where there's also this kind of like you get to go up in status or lose status depending on your the trophy that you got or didn't get, or there's a lot of things attached to who you have sex with, who you succeed on getting. So there's like a lot of judgment happening on you as a human being, right?
Yeah.
So what does that, how does that impact you?
Well, that's a great question, because how does that impact us? Wow.
I think we lost your image, Tony.
Oh, yeah, you did. What happened here? Come on. There we go. So, for example, if you've been known, if like literally your entire career as a man, like as a sexual man, if your entire career has been, oh my God, what's up with this connection? If your entire like run as a man has been with not so perfect women, and then after all those iffy women, if you land one who is beautiful and sexy, like your status, I shit you not, your status can go from here to way up here. So it's like, who are you? Yeah, there's a huge impact actually. If you're dating someone who your friends feel like you could do better, like if I start dating someone and all my friends feel like, hey, you could do way better, I lose status like right away. But if my friends are like, if I start dating someone really pretty and she's got a great personality, my status skyrockets. So if you score someone out of your league, boom, celebration, bring the trumpets, right? If you go someone a bit below your league, it can have a definite impact on your status.
Yeah. So that's really cool. It's like sort of the way you describe this phenomena is like it's a real game of snakes and ladders. You get to go up the ladder and then you fall down the snake.
Yeah,
but I'm
exactly.
curious, what comes with this status? So basically, let's say you have a higher status. What does that mean in your group of guy friends?
That's actually a question. Well, it also depends on the status that has already been established, right? So like, say you're like third out of, like say you're chilling with 6 male friends, right? And say out of those 6, you're about the third, you're about in the middle of the hierarchy, okay? If your girlfriend comes, you're probably going to be bumped up to second or first, just depending on like how it works. Like if your personality,
what comes with that in terms of like advantage? Like what does it mean to be first and second?
Got it. Well, there's a lot of, I would say there's freedom in Well, just because like the way status works, there's a lot more freedom the higher way, like the more your status is, there's a lot more freedom in self-expression and behavior, right? And
So what I'm hearing is like there's
yeah,
a certain level of power that comes with it.
absolutely. Hmm. Yeah. It's not like a rocket boost of power, but it does give you a boost. Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
So we had a bit of a conversation about, different emotions that can come up when you're attracted to a woman or like a young lady, or when you like, you feel she wants you or doesn't want you, and like all the emotions that come out around that. So can you describe to me like some of the situations that you've noticed all these insecurities come out? Like what kind of insecurities can come up?
Well, here's the scenario that I've seen play over time and time again, and this doesn't happen to me very often anymore, just because of who I've become. But um, a lot of a lot of things like fear pop up, um, scarcity pops up big time. Um, insecurities about your looks pop up. Insecurities about your status pop up huge. Like I promise you, if you just people watch a guy who likes a girl, but if she's not giving him enough attention when he talks to her, right? And you can feel his status slowly creeping down, right? As that bridge starts to happen because he likes her so much and she's just doing what she wants, there's definitely insecurities when it comes to status, because everyone knows off almost every time the highest status individual in a room gets treated the best, and they're most likely to mate with the other people. Like
Mhm. So yeah,
simple,
so it
right?
really
Like
sounds like it's this real like context of survival. It's like how having sex with a woman becomes this way of like surviving socially amongst your guy friends.
yeah. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
so when you said the word fear, like what would that look like? What kind of fears pop up?
Good question.
If you could like
I
give
would
us an
say
example.
mm, okay. Um sure. So fears of, what if she gossips? What if she gossips about my behavior and makes me look bad? Fears of just not being good enough to
Hmm.
land her and what that would mean for you. Um, really, I would say it's just one blanket statement is that the fear of not being good enough is the biggest fear that pops up when it comes to women.
Yeah. So fear of not being good enough. And then you were like really insightful when we had a conversation together, and you said to me, there's all these like emotions that come up. There's like feelings of fear of rejection and fear of being too needy, and then I have to put on this personality of like I'm on top of things, but then I keep her at bay, and then she might not, she might run away because I'm being cold with her, and then I
Mm,
come on too strongly, she sees me as needy, and so there's this whole
mm,
sort of negotiation that you're going through. Could you share a little bit about all those different ramifications?
yeah. Um, well, I always like to look at it as like a play. Okay. So it's more so like a dance, actually. It's really just a dance. And if you know what? You know what? Here's the best way to describe it. It's really a game of cards. And if you show your hand too much and you know you've done it, you're like, that's when flight or fight happens. And so you'll start resisting the behaviors she shows. And so a lot of it is like, I don't know, you didn't really ask me a direct question, but
Well, I guess
yeah.
I can reformulate it for you. So
Hmm.
you talked about, being stuck sometimes within this dance between different women. It's like sometimes you've been with someone and you feel like you're too needy with that person, and then they push you away. And then
Okay.
and then it's like, then there's rejection, but then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to be cold. And like, even if I'm attracted to this girl, I'm going to be cold with her. And then
Hmm.
that doesn't seem to bring you to where you want either. And so you're kind of like in between these two situations. And so my question is, um, how do you negotiate this place
Mm,
between being too needy and being too cold?
mm. That is a good question. So what I would say is, first of all, you have to look at who the woman is. What, like, how does she behave, right? Like, some women
We lost
are
your picture.
really,
If you can put your photo
oh,
back.
yeah, got it.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah. Um, how to balance the dance? I would say, first of all, it depends how the woman's acting. If she's really digging you, you don't really have to be that needy. You can just be like, I'll give you my presence. Sure. I'll give you myself. Like, you can have, if you want me so bad, I will give you a degree of my presence. But if she's kind of cold, you have to play it like you're sort of above it all, and like you could care less either way, really.
Mhm.
So, yeah, like, here, I'll give you an example. There's this girl at my school, right? And so I'm new to my school because I moved schools. So it's like my first day. I see this cute girl. I say, "Okay, what's your name?" Right? Raven. My name's Tony. Nice to meet you. So it's been about 2 months now, and throughout those 2 months, I had to. There's a certain dance. You have to read her. You have to say, "Okay, how is she behaving today? Is she in a fun and playful mood? Is she in a sad, kind of depressed mood? Is she in a dramatic mood?" So a lot of it really depends on her. If you're smart enough to understand how women work, then you can actually make the plays. But if
Mhm.
you're stupid and you're always just hot and you're always just cold, like, if you cannot be too much on one side.
Mhm. So you talked to me about, like, at the beginning of the interview that, at the beginning you kind of just were looking for the trophy, and then you're like, okay, you can leave this room right now. My parents are coming home. Goodbye. And now
Mhm.
you say you're different. So how did you become different? Like, what kind of made you change?
Um, well, first things first. Um, Even though, like, I would say my track record is pretty solid, like, I have a lot of numbers. Um, I would say that here's what actually made the transition happen. I like since I would call myself a pussy slayer, like, I got pussy. But unconsciously I still displayed needy behavior, and I still displayed weak behavior. So every time I would catch a girl that I actually liked, and she would like me back because, duh, look at me. um, Not to be arrogant, but like, that was my mindset back then. Okay, if she likes me and I like her, then let's chill, right? But it what I noticed was that I was really weak, and I ended up getting curved by like four really beautiful women. Like, I would make out with the women, and like, I would get to first base, so we would have our fun, and I would be like, "Come on, I'm the man, right?" And then, so I would get to the first part, I would succeed in the first part, and then I could never take it past. Like, I could not maintain any sort of connection with these women because I was displaying weak and needy behaviors. And so after getting my heart like raked through the coals a few times, because like, oh my God, like let me give you an example. Like I had this smoking hot chick, like 10 out of 10, like I caught her, right? Like she was in my grasp. And like she was like reciprocating, okay? I was so weak, I was so needy that she just fucked right off. And after that, that was about the fourth time that had happened. And so after that, I was like, fuck, something here has got to change. And after I started to lose instead of win, when it came to women, that's when my mindset changed. Because when you're winning, why would your mind change? You're winning. But when
Yeah,
you're
totally.
losing, you kind of need to change your mind.
So what changed?
um, what changed? Hmm. Well, I realized that first of all, like vagina isn't even as good as people make it out to be. Straight up, it's not. Meh. But um, yeah, it really just happened that like what changed was that I started losing, and when I started losing, it made me realize, okay, sure, you can get to first base, but there you have the trophy. But if you can't hit the home run and you're not connecting with these people that you want to connect with, like I wanted to have relationships with these women. And when I didn't, I had to look at it and say, okay, maybe they're not just objects. And I had to do some self reflection because, yeah, when you get burned so many times, you have to look at it.
Hmm.
So,
So what, like we talked a little bit about how, porn and getting, like they're like, Tony, you're going to get pussy or whatever, that made women kind of for you into that object. But
mm-hmm.
what in the sort of cultural context that you grew up in, maybe it's your family, maybe it's at school, but what kind of made women feel like objects? And then that, like, because you said you sort of like realized, hey, they're not objects, they're real human beings. So like what kind of brought you to that place of like seeing them as objects?
Ooh. Well, I would say first of all, just the way I was brought up, and um, I never really like personally like my dad never showed me enough affection, and my mom showed me way too much affection. So like I had super polar opposites. My dad never talked to me. My mom talked to me a lot and just like blasted me with affection. And so um when that happened, like the way that has an effect on your mind, having a ton of attention from your mom and no attention from your dad, the, I would say the effect that has is that you value masculine energy over feminine energy because feminine energy is here. Let me make it simple. Can you hear me fine, by the
Yeah,
way?
yeah. Like what I'm
Okay.
hearing is like it's almost like the feminine energy is like so available, and there's a
Hmm.
scarcity of like the masculine energy.
Totally. Spot on. Hmm.
And so like
Hmm.
you're like wanting the masculine energy to like acknowledge you and value you.
Yeah. And well, I guess here's what I had a realization about it a while ago. Every time I acted really needy, like when it came to women, every time I acted needy and weak, it was because this woman was like displaying behavior that reminded me of my dad. And
Right.
since me and my dad never connected, like I would always want that connection. So when I saw a girl acting like that, I would go boom, 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 drive the truck, go right at her, head on, and that would drive her away. And so after a few times of that happening, that's what really made the transition.
Hmm. Now that's a really a really insightful comment, that you're noticing that she had behaviors like your father, and your father's relationship with had a lot of scarcity in it. And so you're like, hey, I want to like get this person because I want to create that relationship I never had. I don't want this. I don't want to be left in the dark again. Like, even if it's a woman, it's like the same kind of feeling that arose with your father.
Yeah.
So could
Yeah.
you give us a little detail about, your friend's your father, what was his behavior and how was this replicated in the women's behavior?
Well, my dad, he always seemed emotionally unavailable.
Mm.
So, yeah.
So like
So
the women would
whenever,
not have that. They would be emotional
mhm,
available.
when they would display that emotionally they were kind of closed off or not available as of right now, because maybe they're still picking their options, right? But when they would display, when they would give that kind of vibe that they're they're unavailable, that's what would really kick it in.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So isn't it interesting how sex and relationships and intimacy, like there's so many different layers there. Like even the emotional
Hmm.
aspect comes and informs how you're feeling sexually with this in the situation too, right?
Hmm. Yeah, actually, yeah. That's what I realized today doing this interview with you. That's actually, yeah, there's actually a lot to it. Hmm. Hmm.
So I see that our time is almost up, but is there something that you'd love to say about your experience, or something that you're wanting to learn, or like you know, something that you've really understood that you'd like to share?
Hmm. I would say when it comes to the whole sexuality, connection over body, like it's 1 million. I'll tell you the way I see it. It's 1 million more important to have good connection with that person than to just have sex with them.
Hmm.
Because, dude, if you want a transaction, just go buy a hooker. Like, if you want a transaction, just go to East Hastings, man. Like, for real. Like, and yeah, like, I guess really what I would share. Hmm, I don't know, because I'm no sexuality coach like yourself, but um, fuck. Yeah, you know what? Just choose a girl you can have fun with and you can connect with.
Mm. It sounds as
And
though like you've
yeah.
experienced when the things are broken apart and you're just seeing the person as an object or the trophy. Then you do something, but it's not fulfilling, like having fun with that person and having sex in that
Mm,
context, and like actually having fun with that person, enjoying their presence. And it's
hmm.
having those two things together is just, it brings a whole other dimension that's, important in your, like what you've come to see.
Absolutely. And I'll just top it off with one example to drive that home. Like, I had this girl, and Julie, this is actually the girl I was talking to you about that one time. Like, she's in my bedroom, this bed right here. And and like I just couldn't get it up, okay? But just the fact that I could connect with her on a person to person basis, I didn't care. Like, she didn't care, I didn't care. And we still had fun with it. And we still had connection even though the body part wasn't there. And so it's like, if you're gonna have somebody in your bed, I really invite you to consider connection is more important than having sex,
Hmm.
because the sex can come later.
Hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you, Tony, for like being so self-expressed and so open with what you're going through. And, I really appreciate it. Like 17-year-old is still really young, and yet you're so aware and alive and like willing to be honest. And it's just, you always impress me with how you show up. So thank you for being an open book and being thoughtful and like looking at what you're experiencing to really put your finger on what's going on. And I'm sure I saw a bunch of people popping up to watch this live video. I'm sure they're going to be really fascinated they were probably really fascinated with what you had to say. So thank you so much for being there. Maybe down the line we'll have another conversation. It's really fun talking to you.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
Yeah, you too.
Mhm.
Okay.